Why is the human dancing? This is a funeral. Intergalactic etiquette disaster. The diplomatic assignment. The holographic summons flickered insistently on Commander Thalia Nakamura's desk, its blue light casting strange shadows across her quarters aboard the Earth Alliance station horizon. She'd been avoiding it for precisely 17 minutes now, instead focusing on reorganizing her personal collection of xenobotanical specimens. The rare orchid-like andromedan flower seemed to tremble under her scrutiny, its translucent petals shifting from violet to deep indigo, as if sensing her reluctance. "Fine," she muttered to no one in particular. "Let's see what fresh disaster awaits." With a flick of her wrist, she accepted the transmission. Admiral Okonkwo's stern face materialized before her, his dark eyes betraying nothing of the reason for this unexpected call. "Commander Nakamura," he began without preamble, "how familiar are you with the Vexillian Confederacy?" Thalia frowned. The Vexillians were notoriously private, a species of tall, four-armed beings with iridescent exoskeletons who had made contact with humanity only 3 years prior. Relations remained tentative at best. "I know the basics, sir. Hierarchical society, highly ceremonial, value age, and experience above all else. They've been hesitant to engage in deeper diplomatic relations despite our overtures." The Admiral nodded. "That's about to change. High Elder Ziv Korex, their most esteemed leader, has died. The Vexillians have extended an unprecedented invitation for an Earth representative to attend the funeral rites." Thalia felt her stomach tighten. "And you want me to go? You're our best xenoculturalist, Commander. Your work establishing relations with the Pellerin Collective was exemplary. We need someone who can navigate unfamiliar customs with grace. The Pellerins are practically human in their emotional expressions, sir. The Vexillians are," she searched for the diplomatic term, "considerably more complex. Which is precisely why we need you. This is the first time they've allowed outsiders to witness one of their sacred ceremonies. It's an opportunity we cannot squander." Thalia knew what remained unsaid. The Vexillian Confederacy controlled access to several resource-rich systems that Earth desperately needed for its expanding colonies. Their technological prowess in quantum communications also far outstripped humanity's current capabilities. A favorable diplomatic relationship would be invaluable. "When do I leave?" she asked, resignation coloring her voice. "The Vexillian escort vessel arrives in 6 hours. You'll have access to all our files on their culture, limited as they may be. Lieutenant Desmond Orwell will accompany you as your communication specialist." Thalia suppressed a groan. Orwell was brilliant with languages, but possessed all the social grace of a caffeinated toddler. "Something wrong, Commander?" the Admiral asked, one eyebrow raised. "No, sir. We'll be ready." After the Admiral's image dissolved, Thalia immediately accessed the database on Vexillian customs. The information was frustratingly sparse. Their mourning rituals were mentioned only in passing, something about harmonic resonance and gestural reverence. Her door chimed 3 hours later, revealing Lieutenant Orwell, a lanky man with perpetually disheveled red hair and an eager expression. "Commander, isn't this exciting? The Vexillians never allow outsiders at their ceremonies. I've been studying their tonal language. Did you know they communicate on 3 simultaneous frequency bands? I can only manage 2 at once, but I've been practicing with—" "Lieutenant," Thalia interrupted gently, "please come in. We have a lot to prepare." As Orwell rambled about linguistic patterns, Thalia packed her formal Alliance uniform, several adaptive garments designed to respect various alien sensibilities, and her personal translator device. She tucked a small case containing her most prized possession, a 400-year-old Japanese tanto that had belonged to her great-grandmother, into her bag. Every diplomatic mission, she carried it as a reminder of the weight of history and tradition. Perhaps the Vexillians would appreciate such sentiment. "The key," Orwell was saying, pulling up holographic representations of Vexillian body postures, "is in the tertiary arms. They're used almost exclusively for emotional emphasis. See this position. It indicates profound respect. Thalia studied the image of a Vixillion with its smaller, lower arms crossed at the wrists. "And this one?" she asked, pointing to another position where the tertiary arms were extended outward. Orwell frowned. "Actually, we're not sure. It's only been observed once during an initial contact meeting. It might be a defensive posture, or possibly a greeting for equals." "That's not very reassuring," Thalia muttered. "How am I supposed to avoid offending them when we don't even know what half their gestures mean?" "That's what makes it an adventure," Orwell grinned. The Vixillion escort vessel arrived precisely on schedule, a sleek craft resembling a massive dragonfly, with an iridescent hull that shifted colors as it docked. The interior was surprisingly austere, all smooth surfaces in muted purples and blues. Their escort, who introduced himself as Third Emissary Tavmores, was tall even for a Vixillion, standing nearly 7 feet with an exoskeleton that glimmered like polished opal. "Commander Nakamura, Lieutenant Orwell," he acknowledged with a slight inclination of his elongated head. His voice came through their translators with a strange harmonic quality. "You honor us with your presence." Thalia assumed the posture Orwell had shown her, carefully crossing her arms before her chest. "The honor is ours, Third Emissary. We are deeply moved by your willingness to include us in your sacred traditions." Something flickered across the Vixillion's multifaceted eyes. Approval, perhaps. He gestured them toward curved seating arrangements. "The journey to our homeworld will take approximately 18 of your Earth hours. I suggest you use this time to prepare. The funeral of a high elder is complex. There are many ways an outsider might inadvertently cause offense. We've studied what information is available," Thalia assured him, "but would welcome any guidance you can provide." The Vixillion's tertiary arms shifted into a position Thalia didn't recognize. "It is unusual for us to share such details with non-Vixillions, but High Elder Ziv Corex was progressive in his views. He believed in greater interspecies understanding. That is why he requested foreign witnesses to his passing ceremony. He requested us specifically." This was news to Thalia. Not humans specifically, but representatives from younger species. He felt it important that others understand the weight of tradition and the obligations of communal remembrance. As the ship detached from the station and accelerated toward Vixillion space, Tavmores began to explain the intricacies of the upcoming ceremony. Thalia listened intently, committing each detail to memory, increasingly aware of how easy it would be to make a catastrophic mistake. Above all, the Vixillion emphasized, you must maintain physical and emotional stillness during the resonance phase. Any movement disrupts the harmonic field that guides the elder's essence to the ancestral plane. Complete stillness, Thalia repeated. For how long? Approximately 3 of your hours. Orwell made a small choking sound beside her. Is that problematic? Tavmores inquired, his tertiary arms shifting again. Not at all, Thalia assured him, silently wondering how she would keep the fidgety lieutenant motionless for that long. We understand the importance of respecting your traditions. As the Vixillion continued his explanation, Thalia couldn't shake the feeling that despite all this preparation, something would go wrong. Humanity's history of first contacts was littered with misunderstandings and faux pas. She only hoped that whatever mistake they inevitably made wouldn't have interstellar consequences. What she couldn't possibly know was that the true cultural catastrophe awaiting her had nothing to do with stillness, and everything to do with a gesture that, to Vixillions, was sacred mourning, but to human eyes, looked remarkably like dancing. Cultural catastrophe. The Vixillion homeworld loomed before them, a swirling orb of amber and violet clouds concealing most of its surface. Only as they descended did Thalia glimpse the vast crystalline structures that served as Vixillion cities, geometric formations that seemed to grow organically from the planet's rocky terrain. Incredible, she whispered, pressing a hand against the viewport. Are those buildings or natural formations? Both, Tavmores answered, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the planet's glow. We guide the growth rather than impose construction. The cityscape you see has been developing for over 7,000 of your years. Their vessel glided toward the largest formation, a sprawling complex of interconnected spires that reminded Thalia of Earth's ancient cathedral architecture, but on a scale that defied comprehension. The central spire alone must have been at least a kilometer high. The Hall of Ancestral Resonance, the Vexillian explained, noting her awe, where the essence of our greatest elders is preserved. Lieutenant Orwell was frantically taking notes on his datapad. The harmonics created by the crystal structures must be extraordinary. Do they naturally vibrate at frequencies significant to Vexillian biology? Tavmoraz's tertiary arms shifted into what Thalia had come to recognize as a position of pleased surprise. Your understanding is impressive, Lieutenant. Yes, the structures resonate with our exoskeletons, creating a constant communion between the living and those who have passed to the ancestral plane. The ship docked inside a massive hangar where dozens of other vessels were already arranged in concentric circles. Thalia noted representatives from at least 15 different species disembarking, some familiar to her, others completely unknown. I thought outsider attendance was unprecedented, she whispered to Orwell. For humans, yes, he replied. But look, there's no other Earth Alliance vessel. We're the first. As they followed Tavmoraz through soaring corridors, Thalia observed the other delegates. Most moved with the careful precision of those deeply conscious of being cultural outsiders. A pair of Ashkari, floating jellyfish-like beings known for their diplomatic skills, drifted nearby, their translucent bodies pulsing with subdued light patterns that Thalia recognized as indicators of respectful solemnity. They entered an antechamber where attendants provided each delegate with a small crystalline object resembling a tuning fork. Your resonance key, Tavmoraz explained. It will attune your physical presence to the ceremonial harmonics. Without it, your biological dissonance would disturb the proceedings. Thalia accepted the device gingerly. How do we use it? Simply hold it against your sternum. The vibrations will adjust automatically. She did as instructed, immediately feeling a strange tingling sensation spreading through her chest. Beside her, Orwell shuddered slightly. Fascinating, he murmured. It's actually altering our bioelectric field. The antechamber led to an immense circular hall with a vaulted ceiling that seemed to disappear into darkness above. Thousands of Vexillians lined the walls, arranged in strict hierarchical patterns that Thalia could only partly discern. In the center lay a raised platform where the body of High Elder Ziv Corex rested, covered in what appeared to be a shroud of living crystal that gently pulsated with blue-green light. Tavmoraz directed them to the section reserved for non-Vexillian representatives. Remember, he cautioned before leaving them, absolute stillness during the resonance phase. It begins when the three moons align, visible through the oculus. Thalia glanced up, noticing for the first time the circular opening in the distant ceiling, through which the amber sky was visible. 3 hours, she reminded Orwell under her breath. Not a muscle. He nodded seriously. I took a mild neuromuscular stabilizer. Should help. You what? Calculated risk. Don't worry, Commander. Before she could reprimand him, a deep, thrumming tone began to reverberate through the hall. The Vexillians responded immediately, their exoskeletons shifting colors in unison, from their natural opalescence to a deep, midnight blue. The effect was breathtaking, like watching a wave of darkness sweep through the chamber. The first calling, whispered a nearby delegate, a reptilian Drazak whose scales rippled with suppressed emotion. They summoned the ancestors to witness. For the next hour, Thalia remained perfectly still as various Vexillian elders approached the central platform, each performing what appeared to be ritualized movements while emitting harmonized tones that made the very air vibrate. The crystal shroud covering the deceased elder pulsed in response to each tribute. Through the oculus, she could see 2 of the planet's moons now visible in the darkening sky. The third was just beginning to appear at the edge of the opening. The resonance phase would soon begin. The final elder completed their tribute, and a profound silence fell over the assembly. The three moons aligned perfectly in the oculus, casting triple shadows that precisely intersected at the platform where the High Elder lay. And then it began. At first, Thalia thought the Vixilians were simply swaying slightly, a barely perceptible movement rippling through their ranks. But gradually, the motion became more pronounced. Row by row, they began to shift positions, their four arms moving in complex patterns, while their bodies performed what was unmistakably a choreographed series of movements. They were dancing. Thalia remained frozen, conflicted. Tav Morris had emphasized the importance of stillness during this phase, yet the Vixilians themselves were clearly moving. Was this an exception they hadn't mentioned, a special privilege of the native mourners? She glanced at Orwell, whose eyes were wide with confusion. The other alien delegates remained absolutely motionless, some with expressions that Thalia interpreted as tense concentration. The movements of the Vixilians grew more elaborate, their exoskeletons now pulsing with bands of color that traveled in waves through the assembly. The effect was hypnotic, almost overwhelming. The crystal shroud over the deceased elder began to levitate slightly, spinning slowly as it rose. Without warning, Orwell slumped against her, his eyes rolling back. The neuromuscular stabilizer, Thalia realized with horror, combined with the resonance key's effects, it must have caused some kind of reaction. As she instinctively moved to support him, preventing his collapse, a discordant note seemed to shatter the harmonics of the chamber. Every Vixilian froze mid-movement, their exoskeletons flashing crimson with alarm. The levitating shroud wobbled precariously. The human disrupts the resonance, someone shouted, the translator rendering the words with an urgency that made Thalia wince. "I'm sorry," she called out, still supporting Orwell's weight. "My colleague is unwell." She moves. During the sacred stillness, another voice, incredulous and outrage. Thalia's confusion deepened. "But you were all moving." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. The shroud settled back onto the platform with an audible crystalline chime that somehow conveyed profound disappointment. Tav Morris pushed through the crowd, his exoskeleton now pulsing with alternating bands of crimson and violet. Anger and embarrassment, Thalia guessed. "Commander Nakamura," he hissed, tertiary arms rigid with tension. "What you have done." "I don't understand," she interrupted, desperately trying to make sense of the situation, while still supporting Orwell's semi-conscious form. Everyone was dancing. I remained still until my colleague needed assistance. The Vixilian's multifaceted eyes seemed to fracture with shock. Dancing? Dancing? His voice modulator couldn't fully translate the harmonic complexity of his outrage. That was the sacred stillness of the internal movement. Our consciousnesses journey with the departed, while our physical forms maintain perfect external stillness. The horrifying truth dawned on Thalia. What she had perceived as physical movement had been an optical illusion, the shifting colors on their exoskeletons creating an impression of motion, while their bodies remained perfectly stationary. "But I saw." "You saw with human eyes, interpreted with a human mind," Tav Morris cut her off. "And then you committed the ultimate desecration, physical movement during the guidance journey." Around them, the assembly had devolved into chaos by Vixilian standards, which meant perfectly ordered movement underscored by dissonant harmonic vocalizations that set Thalia's teeth on edge. Several elders approached, their exoskeletons now a uniform deep purple that somehow conveyed severe judgment. "Why is the human dancing? This is a funeral." One elder's translator rendered his complex harmonics into this simple, devastating question. Orwell chose this moment to regain full consciousness, blinking in confusion. "Did I miss the resonance phase?" he asked groggily. Thalia felt a hysterical laugh bubbling up in her throat but suppressed it. "Lieutenant, I believe we've just created an interstellar incident." The eldest of the approaching Vixilians fixed her with all four of his eyes. "The human has disrupted the elder's journey. The ceremony is compromised." He turned to Tav Morris. Remove them. As security personnel surrounded them, Philia desperately tried one last appeal. Please, this was a misunderstanding. I perceive movement where there was none. I meant no disrespect to your traditions or to High Elder Ziv Codex. She reached for her bag, a gesture that caused the security Vixilians to tense. I brought something to honor your elder, a symbol of my own family's ancestral traditions. With careful movements, she withdrew the ancient tanto in its lacquered sheath. This blade has witnessed 400 years of my family's history. I brought it as an offering of respect. The elder's exoskeleton shifted subtly, bands of color slowing their angry pulsing. High Elder Ziv Codex, Tav Morris said quietly, did express interest in the artifacts of younger species. He collected such items. A tense silence fell. The elder's tertiary arms shifted into a position Philia hadn't seen before. Perhaps, he finally said, each syllable precisely measured. There is a way to salvage this unfortunate situation, if the human truly wishes to make amends. As Thalia looked from one alien face to another, she realized this diplomatic disaster might actually present an unexpected opportunity, if she could navigate the cultural minefield with sufficient grace. Whatever test they were about to propose would determine not just her fate, but potentially the future of human-Vixilian relations. And judging by the colors now rippling across the elder's exoskeleton, it would be no simple task.